Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Jae-in in Seoul. Let's get started with a look at today's highlights. The Korean government is set to release an extra 100 tons of chicken and 4 to 5 million eggs below market prices to stabilize supply. What can we expect from the Bank of Korea's first monetary policy meeting tomorrow under the new Moon Jae-in government? These stories and more coming right up. And moving on to markets, to give us a brief picture of this week's stock market action, we have our Business Daily's markets contributor Choi Jin-seok joining us on the phone today. Hello, Jin-seok.
Good afternoon, June.
All right, so the Korean equity market keeps on breaking all-time records. So how are things looking on today's market?
The Kospi market recorded another all-time high for 3 consecutive sessions. The index rose slightly by 0.24% to close at 2317.34, while the Kosdaq followed with a 0.2% uptick to close at 646. The Kospi market opened the session with a slight uptick, once touching 2322 in early hours. However, foreign investors started unloading shares on the market, and institutions reduced the amount of shares they bought. As a result, the market lost steam in late hours, failing to surpass 2320. Investors seem to be reluctant to make aggressive moves just ahead of major market events scheduled later this week. By sector, pharmaceuticals, distribution, and service shares enjoyed intraday gains, while banking, construction, and machinery performed relatively weakly.
Now, you mentioned investors were in wait-and-see mode ahead of upcoming market events. So what kind of factors are we looking at?
First, the U.S. Federal Reserve will release the minutes of the latest FOMC meeting. Through the minutes, investors will get hints on what conversations were made among Fed officials, especially about a potential interest rate hike in June. Another focus is how far Fed officials have discussed a potential reduction of the Fed's balance sheet. Also, major oil producers will convene at the OPEC meeting on Thursday to discuss production cuts. In addition, investors will be watching the NATO meeting and the G7 summit as well. Since such events are concentrated in the latter part of this week, global equity markets, including the U.S. market, showed very limited volatility overnight.
And a recent rally in the Korean market has significantly raised expectations for further gains. How far do experts think the market can go from here on out?
Most domestic securities firms have raised their year-end price target, seeing a recent rally. Meritz, Shinhan, and Hanwha see the Kospi index reaching 2,500 within this year. Hana Financial Investment even thinks the market can climb to as high as 2,600, and the firm bets on maximum 2,800 by 2018. Global economic recovery, better corporate earnings, and expectations for stimulus measures have improved the sentiment among foreign investors in the Korean market as well. Foreigners already bought $7.1 billion worth of stock this year. As a result, global investment banks have recently raised their position on the Korean market. Among 7 major IDs, 5 companies including UBS, Nomura, and Citigroup have taken an overweight position. This has been Choi Jin-seok for Business Daily.
About 2 weeks ago, President Moon Jae-in signed his first executive order establishing a presidential committee on job creation. And as of this morning, the president's main office has a display showing the nation's employment situation around the clock. President Moon had pledged during his election campaign to personally monitor the bulletin board on a daily basis, getting updates on data including the number of jobs created and key economic indicators in real time. During a demonstration of the board, President Moon once again stressed that the government needs to fix the job market, saying it's a systematic failure that's causing the ongoing youth unemployment. Cheongwade said it plans to make the data on the Employment Situation Board public so people can check it on their computers and mobile devices. Meanwhile, the government says it's working to present a supplementary budget plan to help fund job creation sometime next month. Director for Budget Park Chun-sup at the Finance Ministry said there was a request to present the proposal at the National Assembly's extraordinary session in June. Addressing projections that the supplementary budget would be worth 10 trillion won, or just under $9 billion, Park said there's been no discussion of a precise figure. Director for Tax and Customs, Choi Young-nok, said the government will take into account extra taxes collected, including the $5.2 billion gathered through March, in determining the proposed number. The Agriculture Ministry plans to boost the supply of eggs and chicken to stabilize market prices. Now, this comes as consumers have been paying a lot more in recent months, up to double the normal price at one point, due to outbreaks of avian influenza. Our Oh Soo-young has this report.
The price of chicken and eggs in Korea should finally stabilize in the coming weeks, after about a third of the domestic poultry supply was wiped out last year by a severe bird flu outbreak. The Agriculture Ministry says it plans to supply 4 to 5 million eggs in the first 2 weeks of June, at a price 30% cheaper than the current market rate. Production has recovered to some 85% of the level seen in an average year, and the addition of imports from Denmark, the Netherlands, Spain and Thailand are expected to further boost the supply and help lower prices. To tackle the shortage of chicken, the government will provide an extra 2,100 tonnes at half the market price starting next Wednesday. Authorities will also work with private suppliers to release another 6,000 tonnes onto the market. The aim is to hit 88% of the production level reached around the same period last year. The Agriculture Ministry says it will continue to monitor price levels and work with various food and drug safety authorities to oversee the poultry market. Oh Soo-young, Business Daily.
Korea's net external assets and debt instruments hit a record high in the first quarter of this year. According to the Bank of Korea, the country's external debt, subtracted from the country's external assets, reached $407 billion in Q1, up $4 billion from the previous quarter. Now, the figure has been in an upward trend since the third quarter of 2012, and the Finance Ministry says while Korea's solvency indicators remain sound, it will still closely examine foreign debt trends, as uncertainties in the global financial markets still linger. Eyes are on the Bank of Korea as it gets ready to hold its first monetary policy meeting on Thursday since President Moon Jae-in took office. And to tell us more about this, our Kim Ji-yeon joins us in the studio today. Welcome, Ji-yeon.
Hello.
All right, so markets are expecting the central bank to freeze the benchmark interest rate tomorrow.
That's right. Experts and that have talked to me, and as well as the Korea Financial Investment Association, all forecast earlier this week that the Bank of Korea will freeze the country's base rate at the current 1.25% for the 11th consecutive month in May. And the reason being attributed to lingering uncertainties that could hamper the wave of optimism in the local economy brought on since the election victory of President Moon Jae-in.
It's highly likely the Bank of Korea will take a wait-and-see approach until it sees various economic indicators, such as consumer sentiment and corporate investment, pick up in the latter half of this year before making a move. Despite an uptick in consumer sentiment last month, it's still too early to say that it'll improve in the coming months, given the heavy debt burden amounting to $1.2 trillion currently shouldered by Korean households. Structural reforms in the industrial sector, including the shipbuilding industry, are also seen as hampering corporate investments. Experts also say the BOK will stand pat on the key interest rate as the U.S. Federal Reserve may raise interest rates at its next FOMC meeting in mid-June. High market expectations for expansionary fiscal policies from newly elected President Moon Jae-in, as seen in the recent Kospi rally, is another reason why experts believe the central bank will not push immediately for further monetary easing. With all this in mind, the main consensus among experts is that any changes to the base rate this week or even in the remainder of the year would send mixed signals on what approach Korea wants to take to boost the economy.
If the Bank of Korea raises the key rate, it could hamper the efforts of the Moon Jae-in administration in mapping out a supplementary budget to boost the local economy. On the other hand, if the central bank lowers the rate, it could worsen the soaring household debt problem, as it would encourage more potential home buyers to go out on a limb and buy real estate.
Various state and private data on the local real estate market indicate that it's overheated, particularly in the capital city of Seoul, as transactions during the January to May period are expected to surpass that of the same period last year. This is seen as being exacerbated by record low interest rates and people's heavy reliance on the housing market as a means to accumulate assets.
Now, as you just mentioned, one of the biggest problems faced by the Korean economy is the country's obviously massive household debt. And just yesterday, we got fresh data that put a total at yet another record high. So what measures might be introduced to further curb growth? And do you think we'll be seeing a shift toward fiscal stimulus under the new Moon Jae-in administration?
Certainly. I mean, the experts that I've talked to think that the bank is expected to keep its monetary policy flexible for the expansionary fiscal measures that the Moon Jae-in administration is expected to roll out to boost investment and consumption. And on household debt, the government is expected to put a cap on growth by limiting potential home buyers for purchasing a home if their household debt exceeds 150% of their disposable income. And this was included in the president's campaign pledges, but we'll still have to wait and see if the government will also consider tightening the debt-to-income ratio and loan-to-income ratio as well.
Now, we've seen a lot of optimism ever since President Moon Jae-in took office in regards to how our economy is going to do from here on out. So what's the overall outlook looking like for the economy from here on out?
Well, the main consensus about the key interest rate remains conservative, but the general consensus among experts is that things are on an upward trend. Some experts project in the future that the growth outlook may be raised from 2.6 to 2.8%. This in light of renewed hopes for market-friendly foreign and economic policies pursued by the new Moon Jae-in administration, and they're expected to start taking effect in the latter half of the year, improving consumption through job creation, and as well as the result of China easing its economic retaliation against Seoul for its deployment of the THAAD missile defense system. But they also say they're looking out for geopolitical risks, including increased nuclear and missile threats from North Korea that could hurt the local financial system.
All right, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks.
Credit ratings agency Moody's has downgraded China's sovereign credit rating from AA3 to A1. This is based on expectations of slower growth caused by the government's reform initiatives and the anticipated rise of debt levels across all sectors of the Chinese economy. However, the agency shifted its outlook on China from negative to stable, saying that the government's control over the economy, the financial system, and capital flows offer stability in the near term. The European Union has renewed its ban on North Korea's only airline flying within the bloc for the 7th straight year. The Voice of America reports the decision came as all aircrafts from Air Korea, excluding 2 Russian-made planes, did not meet the EU's strict safety standards. The European Commission said the designations help keep EU nationals safe. It added the 181 airlines banned by Brussels will make extra efforts to have their names taken off the list. A report from the Korea Agri-Fisheries and Food Trade Corporation indicates that the average Korean adult consumed 413 cups of coffee last year. The amount has grown at an average 6.5% every year since 2012 and is now over 28% what it was back then. The domestic coffee market is significantly larger, reaching $5.7 billion, up 29% from 2014. Coffee exports and imports have seen significant growth as well. As of last year, exports had nearly doubled from 10 years ago, while imports almost quadrupled. Markets that have a strong preference for Korean pre-mixed coffee, like Russia, China, and Greece, accounted for a little over half of the country's exports. Despite significant growth seen over the past decade, exports to these markets have declined in the past 2 to 3 years due to slower consumption. Less than 2 weeks ago, the ransomware cyber attack left more than 300,000 computers around the world crippled. locking users out of their data and demanding ransom money be paid in exchange. And now there are concerns that smartphones could be the next target. Our Park Se-young has more.
Ransomware is a type of software that blocks access to data on personal or corporate systems until a ransom is paid. But with more and more people banking and shopping on their smartphones, they could easily become the next target of hacking attacks.
If hackers begin to think that targeting smartphones or other smart devices will be more profitable and have a larger impact, they can switch their direction at any time.
Last year alone, almost 40 million attempted attacks by malicious mobile software were detected. Android devices, which make up 80% of the global market, are more prone to attacks than Apple devices because of their open-source operating system. Since the vast majority of Apple's operating system is closed source, hackers are more likely to target Android users. Fortunately, simply installing security updates can protect devices from cyber attacks.
Over 90% of attacks on smartphones and PCs can be prevented through timely software updates.
To be more careful, smartphone users should only install officially approved apps and avoid suspicious emails and text messages. Park Se-young, Business Daily.
Korea is gearing up for the fourth industrial revolution, and the nation's tech startups are expected to lead the way. And on Tuesday, Seoul hosted the 8th Global Startup Conference at the COEX Convention Center, bringing together entrepreneurs and potential buyers. Our Kim Hae-sung was there.
An idea, seed funding, venture funding, and market access, these are some of the key ingredients for a successful startup. More than 300 tech experts and policymakers shared their insights at the Global Startup Conference under the theme Ready to Action to help Korean startups scale up and expand overseas.
In this era of the fourth industrial revolution, it's an opportune time for startups to unleash their potential. I believe startups and small and medium-sized companies will lead Korea's exports in the future, and we will support them.
In the morning sessions, policymakers from government agencies explained their various support policies for 2017. And investors from the private sector shared their experience with successful startups, emphasizing that it's critical to target a specific market that suits the product, be it in Southeast Asia or rural China. On the sidelines of the conference, around 20 Korean startups showcased their products and networked with potential investors.
Advertising and marketing costs are expensive. For startups, it's difficult to find the right distributor, to get funding and to expand overseas. Through conferences like this, we can network with buyers and investors, saving time and expenses, lowering risk in a way.
Throughout the day, buyers met businesses in matching sessions. With more than 15 buyers from 7 countries meeting with startups to find business opportunities, the conference was one of the most interactive platforms for tech startups. Kim Hae-sung, Business Daily.
There's a brand new tourist attraction right here in the city. A disused overpass has been given a new lease on life, and people headed over to get a taste of this unique space as it opened over the weekend. Our Hwang Ho-jun takes us to the Sky Garden of Seoul.
December 13th, 2015 was the day the Seoul Station overpass was once and for all closed to car traffic. The overpass was built in 1970 to cope with a surging population and to alleviate traffic jams, but in 2006, it failed to pass the annual safety inspection, getting a D, and that led to calls for it to be completely torn down. But instead of getting rid of the overpass, Seoul decided to give it a drastic facelift.
For 45 years, the Seoul Station overpass was a symbol of industrialization, with tens of thousands of cars using it on a daily basis. And after 18 months of construction, the road for cars is now a road for people. It also has a new name, Seoul-lo 7017.
The name Seoul-lo translates to Seoul Street. 7017 references the road's birth and reincarnation, built in 1970 and reopened in 2017. But the number 17 carries even more meanings than that. The overpass is 17 meters off the ground and connects to 17 different pedestrian roads, which lead to many tourist attractions via walkways, elevators, and escalators. A variety of performances and exhibitions will also take place throughout the year.
Seems like a botanic garden right in the middle of this concrete jungle. So I really like it. In modern cities nowadays, you get more and more cars, more and more pollution, more and more traffic, less and less nature, less and less green. So just re-establishing this former automobile bridge into something for actually people living here enjoying the quality of the city, it's amazing.
I used to drive often on the Seoul Station overpass, so I was a bit worried when the city first decided to close it down for construction because I thought it would worsen the congestion nearby. But now that I'm actually here on the opening day with my family, I'm personally quite glad because it feels like the city is becoming more people-friendly, providing a place like this for people to enjoy.
Also sporting the nickname Sky Garden, the overpass was designed by a renowned Dutch architect named Winnie Maas, who took first place in Seoul's 2015 International Design Competition. Just like its nickname, the kilometer-long pedestrian park features more than 24,000 trees and plants of 228 species, most of which are arranged throughout the overpass in the order of the Korean alphabet Hangul.
We have cities where many people have different characters, and that's the same with our plant world. So we immediately thought that we would make to show that explicitly to Korea, and to make it as a kind of library where you could go and see what you want to have.
The project focuses on two long-term visions for the city, which are to encourage urban restoration and tourism on foot.
If development in the past was about completely demolishing an old bit of infrastructure to build something else on top, urban restoration is about keeping and making use of the structure, thereby cutting down on waste and revitalizing the local economy as well. Seoul 7017 is both the starting point and the model for such efforts.
Seoul is known for its dynamic atmosphere, as seen in the coexistence of modern technology and a long history. With the reopening of Seoul 7017, the Korean capital is now setting an example for how an urban eyesore can be transformed into a beautiful oasis and an escape from the city. Hwang Ho-jun, Business Daily.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.